Hello, welcome. Thank you for joining us on this edition of News 2. I'm April Knight in for Sandra Gumansing. Topping our newscast, emergency management agencies were scrambling on Thursday after receiving calls of a terror threat against the BVI and the U.S. Virgin Islands. The Virgin Islands Territorial Emergency Management Agency, or VITEMA, led the local response. The threat has so far proven to be unsubstantiated, but they're still monitoring the situation. Here's more. VITEMA Director Mona Barnes said they got the dreaded call early Thursday afternoon. The United States Coast Guard in San Juan passed along information about a plot against a major BVI airport.
The report was that someone was desiring or had plans to go and blow up the BVI airport, and then there were some unidentified, non-specific threats towards the U.S. Virgin Islands.
The investigation is still ongoing. Director Barnes said she could not comment specifically on their assessment of the threat.
I can reiterate that the local and federal authorities, we are working diligently to ensure that it remains an unsubstantiated report, and if it heightens, then we will take precautionary actions.
She did say she remains in close contact with the BVI authorities.
Constant communication with their Director of Disaster Management. We were able to have 2 briefings on yesterday, and we continue to brief each other on the status of our operations.
According to Director Barnes, they continue to monitor the situation. If they come across any substantial data that the public needs to know about, that information will come directly from VITEMA. But keeping the territory safe will take the entire community, and Barnes is asking residents to be watchful.
What I'm going to ask the community, if you hear or see anything suspicious, I'm going to ask you to report it to 911 as we continue with this ongoing investigation.
We will keep you updated on the situation. Again, if you see anything suspicious, report it to 911. The VIPD, meanwhile, reported a shooting called in on Thursday, approximately 11 p.m. around the Ruby housing community in the Watergut area. An unresponsive male was found by responding officers lying on the ground of Building 3. According to police, the victim may not have been shot where he was found because one of his slippers was found on the other side of the housing community next to the David Hamilton Jackson Terrace. The victim was later identified as Luis Vargas, 24. Call 911 if you have any information. A St Croix man was sentenced this week for 1 count of manufacturing marijuana. Michael Velez, 36, was sentenced to 3 years of probation, 6 months of electronic monitoring, and a $500 fine. On January 29, 2015, the DEA and VIPD officers found 204 marijuana plants while executing a search warrant for Velez's Catherine's Rest home on St Croix. They also discovered cultivation equipment, including lights, watering mechanisms, and cloning solution. Velez admitted that he was the sole proprietor of the residence. Meanwhile, a St Croix man, 55-year-old Carl Hansen, also pleaded guilty in federal court to using a telephone to facilitate a drug transaction. According to the plea agreement on May 7, 2015, Hansen facilitated a drug deal over the phone between a prospective buyer and seller of illegal controlled substances. The announcement that came from the U.S. Attorney's Office did not specify which controlled substance. Hansen faces a maximum of 4 years in prison and $250,000 in fines. A sentencing date has been set for August 17th of this year. Well, here's an update on the restarting of the operations in the old Havenza storage facility on St Croix, now owned by Lime Tree Terminals. According to Government House, some nearly 450 people are now employed full-time at the facility, more than 80% being Virgin Islands residents as required by law. That number includes employees of Lime Tree as well as subcontractors working on various projects at the site. As many as 40 additional employees are expected to join the workforce at Lime Tree in the next few weeks. Meanwhile, lawmakers on Wednesday got an update on the condition of Vendors Plaza on St. Thomas. The area, marked by blue awnings next to Emancipation Garden, is populated by some 67 vendors. The Vendors Association sees it as an attraction, but DLCA Commissioner called it an eyesore. Regardless of the differences in opinions, all agreed that Vendors Plaza needs a facelift.
A project that would greatly enhance the visibility and appearance of the Vendors Plaza is a permanent roof structure over the site. The association has been instrumental in securing a black grant of $100,000.
To make such improvements, however, the DLCA would need additional funding and the approval of the Virgin Islands Historic Preservation Commission, which has presented obstacles to improvements in the past and has rebuffed any and all attempts to renovate the plaza.
Well, soon gone will be the days when testifiers before the legislature can distort facts or outright lie and leave the well unscathed. A bill proposed by Rules Committee Chairman Senator Kenneth Gittens will introduce a mandatory minimum sentence of $1,000, which can go up to $5,000 if a testifier is found guilty of perjury before the Senate. The testifier can also end up in jail for up to 6 months. Representatives from the Attorney General's office said the sentencing guidelines are, quote, proper, but the chief public defender said these cases should be reviewed on a case-by-case basis because there could be mitigating circumstances. Other lawmakers agree that there is a need for the measure, but some had misgivings about the mandatory minimum. Well, the Department of Education is asking for your help to make sure that federal funds earmarked for education are used for education. They urge everyone with any knowledge of the misuse of federal education program dollars to report the fraud immediately. You can call the Department of Education Office of the Inspector General at 1-800-MISUSED. You can also call the Department of the Interior Office of the Inspector General at 1-800-424-5801. Meanwhile, Governor Mapp has nominated Luis Ayala Jr. to the Housing and Finance Authority Commission for the St. Croix district. Ayala has extensive experience in retail hardware and construction trades, according to Government House, and his aggressive retail initiatives have led to growth in sales and employee development. The term lasts for 2 years after confirmation by the Senate. Last days to file your 2015 income tax returns. Bureau of Internal Revenue Director Marvin Pickering recently advised the public that the tax deadline has been extended by 1 business day. It's now on the 18th of April, not the 15th. If you cannot file your income tax return by then, you can ask for an extension. Here's how.
There's an automatic 6-month extension, which is filed on Form 4868. The taxpayer must estimate their tax liability. If they put 0 on the form, a 0 tax liability, the extension form would be rejected. If there's a balance due on that extension, if they expect to owe taxes, it should be paid to avoid any penalties and interest. This is an extension to file and not an extension to pay.
Again, the deadline for filing taxes has been extended to April 18th. That's Monday next week. The Bureau of Internal Revenue offices will be open from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. on that day to accommodate last-minute filers. On St. Croix, their offices at Estate Diamond above the Department of Finance, they're open from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. On St. John, their offices are alongside the Bureau of Motor Vehicles in Cruz Bay. They'll be operating on regular office hours on Monday. That's only until 5. On St. Thomas, they have 2 offices. Their main office is at Red Hook, and on Friday, they'll be open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. as well as on Monday. Their excise tax offices in Niski Center will also be open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. on Monday. Turning our attention stateside, saying issues like climate change and income inequality are urgent matters, Bernie Sanders hopped on a plane to the Vatican to participate in a conference. This just hours after a testy debate against Democratic rival Hillary Clinton. Meanwhile, Donald Trump's campaign continues to blast the delegate selection process in Colorado. With a look at the busy campaign trail, here's Scott McLean.
Sanders will not go quietly.
I stood up against the behaviors of the banks when I was a senator. I called them out.
Secretary Clinton called them out. Oh, my goodness. They must have been really crushed by this.
Following a fiery debate Thursday, Sanders, still trailing well behind in New York polls, not only left the state, he left the country. Arriving in the Vatican to praise the absent Pope Francis. But the far-flung speaking engagement costing Sanders precious time on the campaign trail.
It was something that I could just simply not refuse to attend.
Meanwhile, on the Republican side, Donald Trump penned an op-ed piece in the Wall Street Journal to criticize Colorado's unusual delegate selection process, writing Colorado had an election without voters, and asking Americans, how has the system been working out for you and your family?
What we'll see today in Colorado is a revolt because 1 million people were denied their right to go to the ballot box.
Ted Cruz took on that serious issue in a not-so-serious late-night skit.
I won those elections fair and square.
And today, Trump taking more heat, this time from contestants he once fired on his TV show, The Apprentice.
Trump has appealed to the lowest common denominator of fear, racism, and divisiveness in our populace.
But it's unlikely New Yorkers will fire Trump. Every New York poll has him leading by a wide margin. In Washington, I'm Scott McLean.
Keeping an eye on the economy, here's a look at our New York Stock Exchange. Everything down, the Dow 28, NASDAQ 7, S&P 2. Coming up on NEWS2, it's Child Abuse Prevention Month, and one Virgin Islands organization is trying to bring awareness and put a stop to the issue. Plus, we're headed into the peak of the 2016 Carnival celebrations. We have events to add to your calendar. We'll be right back. Welcome back. April is National Child Abuse Prevention Month. For more than a decade, the organization known as KidsCope has been fighting to protect those children who've fallen victim to abuse, neglect, and sexual molestation. They're using the month to promote awareness and to let them know there are places to turn for help. Sandra Gamansing has that story.
Since 1997, the Child Advocacy Center, known as KidsCope, has served as a safe haven where abused children could tell their stories and get the help needed to begin healing.
KidsCope is still up and running, contrary, I think, to some public belief. Our budget has been cut tremendously, and because of that, we're just open Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday.
Its founder, Dilsa Capdeville, worked for 7 years with the Family Resource Center as a domestic violence counselor. Prior to that, she was the Assistant Administrator for Children, Youth, and Families at the Human Services Department.
We get a lot of cases. Actually, some days we're just inundated because of what's happening with families and children.
For years, she has worked to better understand the problem of child abuse and neglect and to prevent it before it begins.
And the crises that we're really facing in our community with our young people and the levels of emergencies and situations situations they're having that we're really trying to address.
She said the agency remains focused on assuring safe, stable, nurturing relationships and environments for all children.
We're still providing services, the best quality services we can. We're still doing our multidisciplinary team with the police and social workers and doctors and the Attorney General's office in terms of doing the forensic interviews. So we're trying to do those positive efforts, positive features to talk about KidsCope and let our community know the necessity of assisting our children and dealing with these crises of child abuse, child sexual abuse. Now we have pornography, children using their cell phones for pornography, and it's a whole wide range of inappropriate, not positive features that we're dealing with at the present time.
For more information, or to help out, you can call Kidscope at 714-1012 or visit their website, www.kidscopevi.org. Well, all week long, schools across the territory have been celebrating our youngest learners. It's the Week of the Young Child, and on Friday, thousands of children were the star of the culminating activities which occurred both on St. Thomas and on St. Croix.
All right, so you're here at the Week of the Young Child culminating activity, and the children are having a lot of fun. We have bouncy houses, book reading. Right here today now we have Soccer Association is out here playing with our students, Sports Park and Recreation. Cricket Association is out here. Fire is here, Rescue is here, Vitima is here, Waste Management is here. The whole community is out here celebrating our youngest learners.
So we celebrate our young people both in the St. Croix district and the St. Thomas St. John district. And special thanks to the coordinators on the two districts, Giselle Cruz in St. Croix and Calamus Maduro in St. Thomas, and certainly acknowledging Commissioner McCollum, who of course is the leader of this ship, promoting education in all of our young people.
Meanwhile, students from Woodson Junior High School on St. Croix took top honors at the Frederiksted Twin City Lions Club's 6th annual speech competition. That was on Sunday. Jamoy Hardy won first place, while Kyle Lewis, also a student at Woodson, placed second. The students spoke for about 7 minutes without props on what they would do to fight crime if they were the governor of the Virgin Islands. Hardy said he would address mental health issues and limit young people's exposure to violent media. Lewis said he would ensure police presence throughout the territory and make street cameras mandatory. Kudos to these two, and government leaders take note. The social event of the season, the 16th annual Taste of St. Croix, filled the DVU resort with great food, delicious drinks, and very happy taste buds. This year, more than 20% of the vendors were first-timers, which led to an even wider variety of entrees, appetizers, desserts, and beverages. Everybody stepped up their culinary game, assuring event attendees a night of upscale fun and frolic with their families and friends. Modern Zion Kitchen was the big winner, taking home 4 awards, including Best Entree and the People's Choice. Local celebrities make up part of the judges' pool, lending their expertise to the event.
I went to culinary school in Florida, and I worked at a Marriott and went to culinary school at the same time. Graduated in 2008. The same year I went to the Olympics, I graduated from culinary school, and I've been at it ever since. Now I do catering as well, weddings and private parties.
I like foods that are grown on the island and do a Contessa twist on it, where I share different ways to prepare and try new things.
Time for our Carnival Corner. Coming up this weekend is arguably the biggest carnival pageant. The Queen's Selection Show is expected to pack the Lionel Roberts Stadium on Saturday, April 16th. Who will you be cheering for? Here are your contestants. Contestant number 1, Bianca Phillips. Contestant number 2, Ciara Roberts. And contestant number 3, Kamarsha Potter. Head over to the stadium on Saturday to support these young ladies as they vie for the title of VI Carnival Queen 2016. Also, the following day, the young ones hit the red carpet for the Toddlers Derby. That's on Sunday, April 17th, and that starts at 5 p.m. That event also includes the Best Dressed Doll competition and traditional games, and that's also at the stadium. On Monday, April 18th, the Royal Leicester Schneider Hospital's lobby will be transformed for the annual pre-carnival celebration at 6 p.m. On Tuesday is the Junior Calypso competition that starts at 8 p.m. The young Calypsonians prove they are not too young to grace the stage with their talent and catchy tunes. On Wednesday, Cultural Night returns, and that begins at 8 p.m. And then the following Friday, April 22nd, it's the opening of the Carnival Village. This year, the village is named Showtime HQ to honor Jam Band. At the village, that opens at 6 p.m. at the Fort Christian parking lot. Speaking of Fort Christian, that entire parking lot is empty now, as you may have seen already, and some colorful food stalls are popping up here and there. The stretch of Hospital Gata that connects Veterans Drive and Nora Gata has been blocked off to traffic. Motorists who normally park at Fort Christian are now parking at designated alternate parking areas, so you'll see the waterfront apron packed with cars. The viewing stands at the Veterans Memorial Park are also shaping up nicely. Colorful flags all over the downtown area. It's carnival time indeed. Be sure to stick around. Your News 2 AccuWeather forecast is coming up next.